remiss not to thank really a few people, Mr. Dave Martin. And actually, the only reason why I'm up here is because he unfortunately pulled the short straw. and somehow my name came up. As he had mentioned, I'm with Omni International. My former life, I spent close to 32 years in the United States Marine Corps. Went into the Marine Corps as an infantryman. I retired as an infantryman. Did a lot of things in between. Drill instructor, operations chief, squad leader, platoon sergeant, course rider. When I retired, I was the deputy director for enlisted professional military education at the Marine Corps University in Quantico, Virginia. And one of the most important things that I realized, or that was inculcated to myself, was exactly how important it is to pour yourself into somebody else. And that's exactly what leadership does. That you are supposed to make another one of you. That it is incumbent upon you to do that. Right now, you have stewardship over the greatest natural treasure of the United States. None of which grows in a forest, doesn't grow in a national park. It's the sons and daughters of this country. And how you lead them will make all the difference. A few years ago, the Commandant of the Marine Corps had placed on what is known as the Commandant's reading list another book, and he would list certain books that he wanted his Marines to lead, regardless of rank or position, and it all had to do with certain aspects of leadership. And if there's a one-word definition for leadership, it's influence. How can you influence someone? Not command them, because the reality is, as probably most of you already know, you can't make anybody do anything. There are those that have even bought into the false belief that, well, you can make them do things in the Marine Corps, or you can order them to do things in the Army. Well, there's such a thing called the brig. For people who disobey what you tell them. So it's not about you forcing them to do anything. It's about you influencing them to do something that maybe they didn't even realize they could do on their own. And one of the books that was placed on the Commandant's reading list was a book by a man by the name of Stephen Pressfield. The name of the book was Gates of Fire. It was an historical fiction novel. It was something similar to like Killer Angels. It had enough history in it to make it relevant, but there was enough fiction involved for the editor or the author to use some editorial license. And it spoke of the battle at Thermopylae, where 300 Spartans for 3 days held off over 1 million men from the Persian army. It speaks a little about tactics, about how a king by the name of Leonidas took tactical advantage over the terrain, forced 1 million men to channelize themselves and to come into a goat path called Thermopylae, fiery gates. It's a tactical war in his behalf, but it also was a strategic thing because it bought time for the rest of Greece to realize that war was inevitable. Gave them time to arm themselves so they could withstand the assault. There was a hero there by the name of Diacones. The historian Herodotus writes that he was the bravest man out of 300. When word came to them that the archers of the Persian army were so many that when they fired their arrows into the air would blot out the sun. Diacones said, when they fire their arrows, let them darken the sun. We will fight them in the shade. But one Diacones that made the difference was King Leonidas. And so Stephen Pressfield writes this book that recounts the Battle of Thermopylae through the eyes of a man of Zionis. And as he's healing from his wounds, he speaks to Xerxes. What is it that would cause 300 men to think they could even stop the onslaught of 1 million? That there was no way in the world they could even believe they could defeat this army. The king even said, I know they have fear, every man has fear. But what is it? What was it that made those 300 men stand firm? And Zionis looked at Xerxes, and he said these words to him. He said, I will tell his majesty what a king is. A king does not abide in his tent while his men bleed and die on the field. A king does not eat while his men go hungry, nor sleep while they stand and watch upon the wall. King does not command his men's loyalty through fear or purchase it with gold. He earns their love by the sweat of his own back, the pain he endures for their sake. That which comprises the harshest burden, a king lifts first and sets down last. A king does not require service of those he leads. He provides it to them. He serves them, not they him. You could take the word king out of that statement. Replace it with the word leader. Because that's what leaders do. Because not only are you in a position of influence, you are in a position of selfless service. And how you serve has an impact on everyone else below you. We spoke a couple of days ago, and first of all, before I even go there, I want to thank each and every one of you for allowing me to just be a part of this. I tried to remain as like a fly on the wall and be as quiet as I could. Every time you had a general session, I would get in a chair as close as I could to the wall and just kept my mouth shut. Just so I could absorb what was going on. And it was indeed a professional privilege and an honor to be among you. And I don't say that lightly. Because what I did realize, and I'm in a room of professionals. I've had the opportunity to be with some of you on certain staff rides in Shiloh and Gettysburg and some other places. But never in an audience such as this. And your professionalism shows. There's an old saying that amateurs practice till they get it right. Professionals practice till they can't get it wrong. And I thank you for your continued practice. Profession that you stand. A few days ago, I had the opportunity to speak to the FMOs. Is that correct? And we talked about resilient leadership. Resiliency. That it's not a certain type of leadership, it's a part of your leader package. resiliency, adapting through times of adversity, which each of you will certainly be in your own fair share of that if you have not been already. For those of you who have never faced adversity, as I shared before, I'll share with you, just keep on living. But the key to facing of adversity is coming to the realization that you can do nothing about the circumstance, but you can certainly do something about how you react to the circumstance. What is my attitude when adversity comes? Because as a leader, you realize that attitudes are just like colds. They're contagious. And when certain things come upon us, in your position, you no longer have the luxury of keeping your emotions and your attitudes to yourself. That everything that you do, every decision that you make, impacts someone else. And that's probably one of the reasons why I enjoyed myself this week. Because that's the exact same thing I experienced for over almost 32 years. That what you do impacts somebody's boots on the ground. That the decision you make just might keep somebody else alive. Regardless of where you find yourself, whether it's command or general staff. So I encourage you to please never forget that. There's no such thing as a small decision. And that you will lose more by an indecision than you will for a bad decision any moment of the day. So when we speak of resiliency, we speak about coming back from hard times. Remind of a man by the name of Thomas Edison, who in December 1914 lost 10 plants in West Orange, New Jersey, burned to the ground. Even told his son, go get your mother and all her friends because they'll never see another fire like this one. He was asked by a reporter from the New York Times, what are you going to do now? He said, don't worry about it. We just got rid of some of the rubbish. He said, I'm 67 years old and I'm going to roll my sleeves up and I'm going to start all over tomorrow. So Thomas Edison went to a friend of his by the name of Henry Ford, borrowed some money, put his shoulder to the wheel with the rest of his crew. The very next year, they turned a profit of over $10 million. Bouncing back from stuff. At the end of the first day of the Battle of Shiloh, a place called Pittsburgh Landing, 6 April 1862 rather. General William T. Sherman went to his old friend Ulysses S. Grant, was going to tell him maybe we should retreat, and he thought better of that. And he said to Grant, well, Grant, we had a hell of a day today, didn't we? And Grant looked at him and said, yep, we'll lick them tomorrow, though. How do I come back from that stuff? So once I realize exactly what resilience is, I understand that's something I just can't keep to myself. I need to show it to someone else. So as I prepare those that come behind me, then they'll also realize that when the going gets tough, the tough's got to get going. I realize that people are just like tea bags. That you'll find out what's in them after you put them in hot water. Resiliency. Standing firm. Keeping your head when everything else is going to hell in a handbasket around you. Talking on the radio just like you're talking on your cell phone on your living room sofa. It's an internal thing. It's a spiritual thing. Not necessarily a religious thing. It speaks of values. It speaks of my moral compass. It speaks of believing in the true thing. And what it is for me with a compass, you know, there are two norths. There's a magnetic north, and there's a true north. And I need to be aware of where my compass is pointing. And it has absolutely nothing to do with necessarily what I believe. I've got to believe in the right thing. Because if you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with a bad cold and go into your medicine cabinet and believe that that bottle of iodine is actually a bottle of Vicks NyQuil, you are going to have a whole nother set of problems. That I need to believe in the right thing. I need to show my people what the right thing is. As you like to say, what right looks like. It speaks of turning things from lemons to lemonade. Realizing that a setback is just a setup for a comeback. It's realizing that failure is an event and not a person. And all too often we take the opportunity to label someone a failure instead of building them up. Now, for anyone that may not know that it is snowing outside, and it's because of that reason that I'm certainly not going to keep you any longer than you need to. But I'm going to just leave you with this. And sir, if I may, if you would allow me to close at this point. When I joined the United States Marine Corps, I used to say that the Marine Corps builds men. Oh no, sir, you don't have to. At the time when I joined the Marine Corps, they had just signed the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution. My intent was to go to Vietnam. I didn't make it. They stopped the flow. But I had the opportunity to serve with some very fine people. It also made me realize exactly how old I had gotten. Because I remember that there was a first lieutenant when I was stationed at Marine Barracks, Washington, D.C., just graduated from the United States Naval Academy a few years before. Snotty-nosed kid. That still needed to be led. I was a staff sergeant at the time. And then somehow, even prior to me retiring, that same snotty-nosed first lieutenant became a 4-star general, and he was commander of United States Central Command. And he reminded me of how I used to treat him. To which I just responded, yes, sir. And you deserved every minute of it. But this is the one thing that I realized. This is the one thing I discovered, and it was really a mind-blowing thing for me. And years prior to this, I bought into it. I bought into the whole thing. I used to be I was a drill instructor one time. I guess maybe you can. And I had the opportunity to push through 10 platoons. I mean, they actually see a transformation in people of over 600 men that came in the Marine Corps. Well, I even had parents come up and say, you know, I know exactly who you are, which isn't necessarily the best thing you want to hear. And this one mother in particular said, I just have one question for you. How did you do it? So my son is 19 years old, and I can't make him do anything. How did you do it? How did you? He said, I saw him and didn't even recognize him as my son. How did you do it? And unknowingly and ignorantly, I just went, man, I'm doing a real good job. But that's not so. But this is how it's done. And how it's done is the responsibility that each of you have. There's a story or a movie known as The Wizard of Oz. Story of a little girl by the name of Dorothy and her little dog named Toto. They're caught in a tornado, and when they wake up, they're in this magical land, and they meet three people. Tin Man, a scarecrow, and a lion. Lion looking for courage. Scarecrow looking for a brain. Tin Man looking for a heart. The whole context of this story is that they are off to see the wizard. They're going down this yellow brick road so they can find this wizard to give them everything they were looking for. And then when they got there, they realized that the wizard was just a small, dumpy, fat man with a bald head. But the wizard told them something. You came to me looking for courage, a brain, and a heart. You already had it. You just didn't know you had it. And that's your job. That you take young men and women and pull something out of them that they didn't even realize they had. You can't put something in they don't have. No, they've already got it. You got to pull it out and show it to them. That's your responsibility. That's your obligation. And it's necessary. I thank God for you. And I pray for your continued success. Semper Fidelis.
Hoorah.